Yoxatini, Takat Johan, Yachana, Kaasgéiy, Ayachtwasagudu, ʼéidáx Yisaku, Ayasatk, Ka Shkalnik Klein Aya, Yéil Ţlaachkalniki, Awe, Chukan Shach Sati, Ya du Ai, Yata, du seek away, ʼéidáx, Mary Palayo, who o Akaushikit Yata, Keuchne Adayejiwane, Kakachwan Ish, Shikshani, Khataya Kachali. Ye awe, Dísi real to real Akaye Wutien, Aka late 1960s awe Akaushikit. Tlakhlakuzi awe, do Yuchatangi Katushkalniki. Kwashiayaki just do aye dati jakachtune. Shukwa Yata.
Jayanas Tahayusha what Kayaku Krekudosa Yéil Ţlaakw. What Jayanas Kahawe Kayat in what the cocked in. Kayutahik the Kawakout to cock the Trashjak. What would like at Kawayatana? Yakasco. Joanna so that Hakolayo Jakawashawat. At Genkach. I will use Tashakotan Shakawasho Shaka. Was also Quayaka Shawat. I would like the Ayahuan, Asahat Kawatan. Stutlak Ayotash in which I hold. We could have Kayatan. Hayu Akako Yokisko Yokisko good to a sack. I want a happy, I want a hawk chaco. I hated a she. Kayutahik the Kaunai, I want a cash chakota. Ayat Judea Haka. A Judea and Haska. Jayakagiltit, Jawakagiltit, Jayakukatis, Jahakakukatesatini, Takti to Quayakati, Te, Isatini, a water, a cake by Takakatati, Kisakati, I was like a note, water. This was the Kayo, you said. Oh, I hold I collect. It was so sitting, Dr. Toko take a queen. What a hakawate, Kakawa note. Kakana note or so get it. Kayat to city water. Yet. A Jawa sucked the wheat for city, Yéil Ḳutlaakw. Suck wheat for city. To each for city, yes, each for city. You shall get a cow at was to each other. At Cocos tea to yet there. Can no Yaku to Yéil Ḳutlaakw. That will get an outside yes. I got what the issue was a car. Had Kakuts away, it hekta, hit the kindle, but so you go. I think you can't say, I didn't go. What position of how it goes so, because it was a ton, Kayahoya couldn't so okay. And Tatanuku, as you can attack at the kindle, so what is Kayakan talk. Kayakan the 20, what are you, what eat? I would eat what I wish I could take out what the Kayaka. That was a tender in a horn. What are you? Without Ḳutlaakw, what? Ha, was what is in there? That's a how what? Are you the Naku you asked? You talk about steak. Naskage at the Naskage to do what? It's a house at hand. Kakahuti, what are you? Because in our ass. That clear start, they were like that page you hold it was. كتوتا هو كسكوت وإن شغل قلت كيول لقيت قلت لك عتوك وخد كيول لقيت تسا كيول ليك أتقول وانا هذا خد يشنو هاي خد لقيت تواس خان توتا تويون يقصكو كيكو يو قاتو أنا أتينا كو أقا أتاك لقيت توشو سقا كلاش أقاو أتكتودو وقلت له أو السو ويقصد هلاك إقالك ستل أو أشي أسدي أو السو أقاو تعطي ألو قلت له تقاو سكوتي وتلي وسقها ولاق شكاقيل هلاق شكاقيلها كيبك وسكين قلنا أقتل شاوك تقاو الكيت وتلي تخك شاخو وسقيق تلي تقاو كتيت هذا شو تعالى وتلي خيس أوخج شلي الواد شلاق أعطوا تقاك نايا دوناق تعطي توخج جتنا وعشان هيك وتهيتي توين أكو كان نستا وناق كان هاد الشاي هو قد كان نستا كلا توابشك وعشان هيك وناق وتهيتي أو تدو أخوستان تقول شكاقيل الناق ليوسق كيش كنا اللي كشاوك اغتا كيوت أتان قوتو واتكوشك قاعدك شول لخوتك أقاوه تلاتو نقصينية يسقان توانا قوتو كيلك أول هي يوسقها وقنه شقيس قنا يكتا شقيس قنا يكتا أقاوه تتاقو قنا يكاوتا وقيس أو تحتاج تعطي نقصك دي تتاقو أو ناسي ده هو خنتو وقتو نقو قتو تتاق أو تتسقس وشو ستاق نه قيس شكيسيني كتا يوسقها تحتاج تقصنه ياخذ الكريو وقيس تتاقو يتتاخن أو تقوى قاوتوج الجنس كنجيتا كشي أتقوش تقاوتوج واسيتون أو تعاوتوك كاوتوك إنا وش نعتاق كاوت سلت وقاو كتتاخن تا كن يكو قيك أكي شقبتليتا تنقت آنه هاكو يوزقاتتها هاكو بجوخ هاكو تكوخ خاوه قيسا وخوخ أدوش قتليتا تنقت آنه يقاوك توتاقو يقاوك توكو توتاقو يخوتلا توخو تاقو وكو توقاوك توكو جلسكت آنه كتكوخ ساتيز تلواسيك قلنا يشو السقا جلسكت آنه كتكوخ ساتيز تلواسيك قلنا أقاوتها ساقا خودك قدن أسنكتين ها كوكتا شقيس قنوي كتتا شاكا قاتت كوكويا قنوي كتا أقاوتها قنوي كاوتا وقيس جلسكت آنه وياشن نكت لا تلوك تكيت يهوك أوي ويس واسوشكي كوخانوك أوانا سوي خاط قتاقين يدهوتتان خاط قتاقين لو تقيني أوكن داتشون كي خاط توتقين جيتش وتا توت يووني وخاط توت جو يكتبو سقي خقو شاوت لتليقت عنك يوكا يكسيني كواسك شواسك شيداتي قلت لي أنا سين كياكو أخدي جا قلت لك كون سكشا وخي ياكو ها تشوقو يا وساتا
واش تستلقى داكي قاختي لا لنجت غينخ قاتي قاقينخ تسهل وساقتي كخيسرك قاطلين اتويا وخي يا اخت وسكو يسكو ياتا Kachkunachwe chasachan weyuchatang. Ja ach teich toet aya. Ach kla voor owe. Ja nanan. Gaat u cheat uit de taan. Stray genki a at ausaku owe ja klingetani da. When Nick klein kunach de katu. Du tu doe awacha. Aka yeach saka. Ja ach kla. Aya klingetani kategurleti. Helwasa ekwane. Ja kunachwe adat utachotank. Data nirsakayati. Kone aya kanak kukugud nana ani de. Ye awa kidzi at kwash Johan Sukhoa weka kainach a has to tuosagu unyuk ewatan chuklay ya has to kosti yishu de has kukugud. Ye kidzi at nashe kukkitin nashe kukkitin ye awa ach to ish ʼéidáx. Ja, das de ja awe de wuna. Du da it ko a has du na ke hiti ide. Has au sata. Na she ko hitin. Yo huchinias ha in ka ke ha chaye ko gen ka trai ka ko ki thu ka ya chaye ko gen ka we ka khwe. Ye awe ade awe wush tutsa khaniye. We yuk tank ajishaguni. Yalta kat be kosti tud. Das dazu Johann. Wat lisetin. Kesh adeye unnachseneye. Ja, du. Kijk, eenig lisetin. We, ja, that's it. Kesh ade chu ade nachzekideye. Chashugo at chayego ginkko. Chakudiyete. Sky do.
Siúchanachach né né siúgu chénach hé.
And especially like if they're not listening, is what I was told. Hey, like it's not like hey, it's like hey. It's like that.
Stinge chénach cúch sa tí or gléá chénach?
It's tlingit.
Well, does it come from like the English hey or
No, or else would they just say hey? Because we have all those. So like there's a sound substitution when it comes in.
like kukas and keek and stuff like that? Yeah.
Yeah, like there's a bunch of Shingish words that we use that are but she does like I'm sure you noticed there was an underlined N in here. So if you listen closely to the recording, she would say Qulaye. So it should say la. And we know of 3 speakers that did that. And it seemed to always be the N sound. My great-grandpa did it when Richard Dowenhauer met him. And when they're going up to record Yéil Ţnámhaigh, they stopped and talked to Ankadechtzin and Kash to tléixʼ. And he met Ankadechtzin ach Kla du ish oe du tuos gudlet pa yuch ewatan. Bert Dennis. His name was Bert Dennis. He says, tell me about model skills. And Richard Dowenhauer was just really thinking like, what am I going to tell him? And then my great-grandma, Marion Dennis, leaned in and said, marten skins. Tell him what you know about marten skins. And he thinks, what am I going to tell him about marten skins? I don't know anything about marten skins. So, but that is a sound substitution that is, it's very unusual, but it like when you listen to her, she goes, hagulak, hagulak, like when she's saying nak.
So a nay wouldn't be good in like an email because that's kind of like, hey.
Yeah.
You're saying an email because I've seen some people say that in an email and I wasn't sure what it was.
Yeah, there's a group that we both work with and they've been using that And so I kind of took it to a speaker somewhere, and I was listening to a recording. They're working with Kayaaní, and she's like, that's like if you're trying to get someone's attention and they're not like sort of like how you would use hey, but hey is like such a diverse word in English, like hey, how's it going? Whereas more like hey. So it's like,
Like pay attention.
right? Especially like, and there's some of these terms, they go down the kinship. So you don't nay grandma, or else, they'll be like, ooh, she was a good one. That was too bad. Right. And so that's what it seems like to me. And so there's a whole bunch of little words like that too that we'll just continue to find. Like I remember a lot of us were using aqana to just be like generally, oh no. But they're like, that's when something really bad happens. We're like, oh, what if it's just like oops? And they said come. So come is our cup, our oops, which is interesting because there's a P sound in one of them. And then the M sound in the other, which is not very common on the coast. And then, but there's these other ones like pushkadan ah. Pushkadan ah is like if something really bad happens. But we'll see it in one of these Raven stories. We'll probably, I guess we'll map out how we finish. I think next week we will do Catherine Mills. And then we'll try and finish as many of these as we can. And then we have Thursday of next week too. And then that's this is the only one.
Sorry. One more quick question before I lose it. If we go Kinde, when they're talking to the tide to come back up, I should have looked at the number.
Okay. That's her. I love when she starts doing the little whisper thing. She's like, right here.
Yeah, it's saying, I was just wondering if it was something to do with coming back up. Start coming up.
There's something about this verb is to flow.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering about that because I seen the guna ye, but I never seen that ikade.
Yeah,
So
so
specific to tides. So you couldn't say that to a person.
yeah, like, and no, you don't, I mean, it's Raven, so you are gonna get things that like you could stand out there and tell the tide to do whatever you want. It's not gonna happen. But I guess if you had some sort of spiritual magic, you could say. So this is ye, and so you could this is a motion verb, and so the tide is different. It does use motion verbs to talk about the flow of water, but it's different than a person because for people you have like go that way or come inside, and so you have a whole different array of motions where this is usually like flowing north, south, flowing downstream and kind of a little bit more limited. But when you say qone or qoneye in front of a motion verb, that will always make it a zero motion. So you say qoneke, start walking, right? Qoneke, start driving, right? So you just go straight to the verb root. And so that's what's happening here with kada. And so then you've got which is an object. You don't usually have an object in there. So it's like you start flowing as a command. So I feel like if you said that, like a big wave should just splash on you.
So would that always be command form then?
This would, because he is, but if you go to, this is the only story that names Raven's mother, which is interesting. So we'll drift back towards the beginning. Kayaaní is her name. And then this person's name is Yéil Ţlaakw, which the U in front of it and the K at the end show it's a repetitive verb that's not conjugation, like you chayatunk, they are talking. And so pis is a shortened noun of peace, which is the tide, and kawaka is our verb here, which is to command someone to go somewhere. usually. And so this word, this name means tide commander. It's still a name that's used, I think, by the Dísi and maybe the Tuckdane. But this is also the name of the moon. So like this stuff gets really interesting to me as I analyze these stories. The oldest ones telling these stories are pretty clear that the moon is Raven's uncle, and it went up way before he got to the box of daylight and the stars. Skydoo.
Yeah, so that's what I always had a theory for this too, doing X'éig research for an organization in the Yukon before I came to school here, because there was a story called Animal Mother, and she gave birth to all the animals, but Raven was never one of Yéil was never one of those animals.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but all the other animals came from Animal Mother.
And it's interesting too, because this raven, same name, different than all those birds, right? Like that's why we put capital Y in there. And you'll usually hear like you Yéil. It's said sort of like that. Yeah, good point. Shakirqa. This is the noun, nak shakirqa. It's usually called tana. So here we see the kirqa is a gaff hook. And then when you put nak in front of it, you have the octopus, and you go shakirqa would be for gaffing the head of something. And so it's for gaffing the head of an octopus. But it's also called tana. And then there's a verb, which is very rare, which would be, I would think I've only heard it in this form, a tunk. I think that's the imperfective, and that's to octopus hunt. And it's I don't know if you folks have ever seen one. It's a very long pole with a pretty big hook on it. And what you're supposed to do is you can find an octopus den, usually under a large boulder that goes under the water in the high tide. So you go on a really low tide. And then usually the bigger the shells and the bigger the pile of shells in front of its den, the bigger the octopus. But you have to be, they will just like be down in their den, and you have to be very fast with it. So once you make a noise or something, it's probably going to scurry, but you got to be pretty quiet with it and then go in. And so like I've seen it done. Other commands that you won't see very often is shqaqilha, although shnitwat would work for like a cat to, you know how they make themselves big, they puff up. Dogs do it too. Like one of our dogs gets a real nice ridge on its back.
Could we have a look at that verb where it's to clench over?
Oh yeah, do we know about where?
It's back a bit.
Oh, was it the boat?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, there's this one. So
Right.
And I think there's one probably earlier.
There's another one. Yeah.
Mm.
There it is.
Yeah. Duka kakdich. So what we're looking for is this go to here. I don't see it. This is let's see. What is under? Well, we don't check it. Okay. And I don't think this goes to the underline X's with the ejected. But I do think, and if you folks know where to find it, go for it. But this is where we can sometimes look into the stem list is another one we can go to. And we go to here. My experience is like when you click on the thing, you end up like a page beyond it. So then I scroll up a little bit. And I don't see it here either.
It's funny, I remember looking it up a long time ago, but I can't remember what happened. Yeah.
The name of the Linka. How did we? There must. So there's a few of these too. Like if we know that Nora worked on it, then and then we can't find it anywhere else, and it's quite likely an undocumented verb. Anybody finding it anywhere? I think the only place I find it is in the name of that Linka, which is also X'éig. And that's the first time it's in there, and there's no note with it. So let me see the second one. It's the octopus tree. So we've got Yéil. Yeah, I'll have to see what I could find. I don't know.
I'll look some more too.
Yeah. Okay.
Big cheese.
Yeah, it has some clenching. Like there's something with the, I don't know, biting down, perhaps. I was thinking of gnawing on something. I wonder. Let me go on my thing. Okay, I thought, okay, so here is, this is from there's a dog named Chewing Ribs, and it's ʼéidáx. So there it is again, but with no. So I knew I'd seen it somewhere. So I think it has to do with like to just crunch down on something, maybe. So there's a verb for gnawing on something. And maybe this has to do, because like when we think especially of dogs, like if you watch a dog like chewing on a bone, like it's got some different ways of doing it. And I'm sure that there's going to be different things for like just generally like gnawing on something, but then sometimes they come in and they put it in the back of their teeth and they really like crunch down, and so could be something like that.
But was the other one pinched like the second X? Was it blood?
And so this is Yéil Ţnábú. So we could go in, and if anybody's looking for something to do on Thursday, since we're not getting together, listen to it and see if it sounds like, because it could very well be missed here, or it could be added on the other one, because she talks so fast that it's hard to tell. And I don't know if it's, we're going to lose our spot here, but we'll find it again. Yeah, so then they're getting into Lingi. So I do think that might be the only instance of it in here. And she's, yeah, when we get into Susie James, she's got a couple of really fun verbs that you don't see in other places. Uh-oh, lost my spot. Okay, ready for the next one? Make sure I'm sharing the sound, okay. And I do think there is these are chopped up a little bit, so there are ones where I think it does go right up one right after another.
أوجكتي أو تاق وكان سيتوت بيو وتوته ككيك هو قيقي أو قاطع نقصته لقاطع هو نستيج لقاطع وقت قنج لك وقت نكج كنت السياقك نج جا كنت السياقك وجكي أكو قيقج قاطع نقصته كتقاطع هو سيتي كتلتسا وتاق كان سيت كتقطع قنج كاته ها تقول تاني ويان تقن يا قلت لك هاقش قاقش شاكو تسيقك وسجوية جوية تاني أو توي نخنا كاوسيد وته أو تقايق لغت ستي وتقايق نوشد آن كلانا ها كنا
داوود
داوود وصايوتي
75 or so. There.
Yeah, so we encountered this one. I think the first time I saw this on Dawood was with Kayaaní George Davis. And it was when Raven was trying to pull the box of salmon to the shore. And then they said, and it had something to do with about like, just like really putting there was fortitude built into that somewhere. And so I do think there's this really interesting relationship between potentially like woot, and wooch. So you could say ʼéidáx. You have like mental fortitude, and ʼéidáx, you're stubborn. And so there's a thin line between that. And so as we let me try and find it because it was like such a cool narrative. And I'll see how Kayaaní was using it. Marsha Hodge helped me to figure it out. So yeah, so here's another instance where it might be kind of related. So on Dawood ayati, like we'll find one with the translation, which I think is
Right.
down at the end there. The place where on Dawood awati, the place he did it with fortitude. But that one was Dawood. And so there might be something with Dawood where it's like a difficult thing. And so this was like, he tried so hard that his feet forever like imprinted in the sand.
Thank you.
There's so many fun parts in this. So thinking back, just the way she does these things, like that kind of stuff is so fun when you're listening to it. And then she says, siach, then asked her daughter how to say it in English. It says siater, so she says siat. And then when we were translating this, so he goes, haku, hakuk, haku, haku. I was like, okay, there's a little slight difference. So what's going on? And so I said to Marge, how would you translate haguk? And she said, come here, cutie. And she's very flirty about it. It was very fun. So like this, so like thinking about this, like it's possible for you. Is it possible for you to, and like the motion verb isn't necessarily there. So like, and so this would be like wutlachish, it is possible. And then he says which is to swim quickly underwater, which the swimming verbs continue to make me think about like there's just a lot of work for us to do to figure out how to make sure all of these verbs are coming along with us, like all these different swimming verbs. And then this one, now that chat should be probably a high tone. But here we have this you can't help me. But we throw geh right after klesh. Is there no way you can help me? Those are just really fun ways to ask for things. Okay. Is pretty fun because you got te, and when you put and it becomes a compound, it seems like there's two things that happen. So if you put a suffix onto te, it goes like, for example, you'd have take, which would be a little rock. So it goes long and low, and it's just something that happens. But I think there's something that happens when it becomes a compound here, where it goes from an E to a, and that's why you have tuchai. And then I do believe su is giant kelp, gish is bull kelp, kaja is a kelp island, which he also calls it sukadut, which is a tangle of these. And then it's also called kushtayagu, because people used to see the land otters using them as boats that go cruising around. But like when you saw it, it would look like a person in a boat. Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna find this one. Okay.
كنا كنت فلتنا خويا قاعدتين وتقايا التقينا وغن تقينا وتا كنت سيقا وتاق تاق نستيوي سقنا يوقت وسكاوي أتيوتي كده تواتين نكيك كنشو وخانا أو شهادة تحنت وأكوش نه وتكي تكشتا كتكي نقانا كشينا خنرسبق قانا يوتكي كي كنش حتى ثلاثة واش كتلون تسكيش وانا سوق أخو خنت وقت أتا تاك التقين أخوني هذا تشيوق أنت تاك التقين أكشينا خنرسبق أوقات تاكل تقين وقفكو أشوت الحياك وواك وشوش كي وكنت له أشينا خنا يوسيق وقانا أشوت شيء وتوقانا قيل وسكش أو تاكيتي كل تاكيتي أو أشوق أنت شيء وت يكوش تشينا خنا يوسيق قانا
Chakuchkatniki away ayanaki yati ayayata. Atlain atko artuasukuyat atach. Yoxane yata gwashi wakshi kekakosane. Kaasgéiy Kaasgéiy وش كخسخت يا هستوش كلنيكي ياتتين قائخ و هزاوستين يا تلش قاخينخ يا هس أوتين أقا أخروز يا قشكو التخوي تاسوي قاخينخ أقا أخين هسكاونيك يا كيش كلنيك وقايد قايد التو أتلنجت يلقى كل تام كهيتي
Ata tsakona ye kutawa tusitini atawa wahit ten he ni hokata usi hashakoa ye akato tsakan kegate tsakato sikato kegate ta sakshiyuka tahoshyu kuchi ta sakshiyuka yuhita yu kegate kato tsakanka hachahita hahtawa tietayo te kehte tuwatin awat ketkotuto wakot atuske kahonach nasatiye atuske akanal watsawa atuske kut qatashi wana sawo hit qawlto wakot hita wasitin washaqaq qotlahanto wakot ha wasqiya nektu shosaq wasqiya nektu Hayu teki te tuotina to tuasiku Yéil Ḵutlaakw. Pu teki te tuotina at. Ke kata yu katu tsakin kunakh. Chahit te khayr tuwaiti etta yu. Kakhe te kaya kukwe. Tuasiku Yéil ख़utlaakw. Alisawu ta shekha khukh. Akh qatu shiye. Awat hayu shusaka. Wasitu wasaku. Yéil ख़utlaakw هو إقواس سيتوساق جلوسك هق الأخوات قايا خايا خط الأخوات قايا أي خط هاكون الته كهد أجوة هندو هدي إيه تصيب كالتقي أي يدو هدي يقود وتخوتا قاوة هنوناك لقوة ساقا هي تتوت تأخلاق يا وطن يا تتشيد خهيزك شياتت تتهيو هيدا يتلاقيت لأنا خنقوتك تقود كشه ليش خوز كقوز الشيطاوتي هتلاقيو هيدا خطلاقي خاطلي كي يجيتت قطانتو تلاتي يجيتنا قطانو يجتليخ أهو قريقا كشه قريقا خاوة خاطي خاوة قطاشي أجوالا خطلقيو هيدا تيجيتك قطان هيك إيه أقاوت لأشي كوت لأخوشي كي كو قشيشي يوهيت قنا يساكيك نيانده أقاوت خواقيك وشي تختوني بجداد ياك أول أدوكوت تكاتا كانك إيواتن وكوي وهيت كجياها أنا جياها يكدو أقاتن أنا وداكوت كستيج ها جيدانا يو تسكوتشانا كاوا ها تسكوتشانا يوهيت واسيو هاتا كنا يوسيخيخ وانا نيسوا كنا أشيندك تكنا يوسيهاش أقاوي كنا خوات قايا آوا إيخ أشي وشقوا كنا خوات قايا خاتت الشي أقاوتا سوانتا كنا يوسيق شوية تايا قايا وتسكوتشن كنا أغنطلق تسكوتشن أغنطلق شوية تايا قايا وانا نسو كنا كنا وسيق أيكتا وقود أيكتا نقود أو خسين سوا مناقود لقود ساقاق والخسين Akawatsa ayek te wuku. He. Atana ataka hete suweka. Katata yu ay yu itkiyata kate yu hete shukich. Tasa sak yaw chat. Katwin tak at kawtsihin at yu shawa hek yu hit.
Dat katachsoos de sakoko kan gaat gooien.
Ha tlekam dusko shaka kado ayo. Shaka taklin kita yu ko at kuto. Kuto kawa kayo siti. Kalakwat kaya dat kasak siya shutisa. Yushika hukse tu katawa sako. Katkashi ayo yakukla katawa ko a. Awo yakhans katlikwe. Wishat khikho. Yukotoche ko an kunukyo ke kawashi awa hakla tuta hakotel chuan kuwutin awa wan nesawa jesho sika he yaw tu khwako khawasa yakuga tsitskulta katat shu katat uskana kakawa tam tu khwako hasawas at kasi at kawisi at iwi yan usana ay hawat hetako at iwi tatuna hetako chik kanta katite asityan ketute akawasa at kakatuwate tukoy tuk anak awsliket ang isutiyat watas kuksane kasaka utsite wa huchute kuta ota nakasute ke kusot iwa ka wata taka usinne hut takatu chi kwasi uklike ya usakha khaya sakha awata tsu charge ko sihat kuse at kuse patha at kuse ketsusat ko utsi iwa tis kusan kadus ko na yate at atak chojina ita hawcha chokneu ko thana negate ayu yek to nik yutleu se choknena yu wa yutleu yuna nun hana na ha yutleu thena wo at ya yosetin yutleu yu ta as en sikre yu ko nik to khos wasuk ke ko ya khate ko yutleu ka yu ye thida le chine ta ko he Yutukositi, Yutleuka, Yutkotatan Kaitaka Kaya. She got a Kintaka, Sakaya Kakasen. Kitsak you have to go so to what ye take our Takausi, Kaya Yak. You hit Takausi, Kayet so at it, Ustakal, Yutleu, Yusakunena at Yutleuko. And you teach us how to say who to see it.
So at that age, we recording. Yéil Ḵutlaakw we that's how we to we program kutziti we click we audio katu uzi at we atshi adata we yukhewatan we anakhwat kwaya shi yewa guksa yadu ishatchi khukh sha dang yewa adat yukhewatan Gwashe to was a go at she ahi sha dang ai ka gwashe to was a go at it dushkashni ki sha dang yeah Dísi tan ai ko we at she look nach adi at away we could the tan kahiti.
That on Niada towards us or in this direction. What is the na there?
Oh,
she
yeah.
says it a couple of times, but
and we were talking about this too, like Heinach Niade and like Heinach, Dayinach, and Kayaaní. Those are really interesting things because it's like I guess like ʼéidáx, which is related to this one, would be like, oh yeah, we're over on this side. They're on that side. So it is sort of generally this way, like hagu and hot, yagut. But coming, let's see, let's find where that was. I can't keep it from you forever. Such a tricky person. Let's see, where was that? It was further than this, wasn't it?
It was, there was one towards the end, but there were a couple earlier, I thought. But oh, here we are.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I do think what you have here is ha, which is like, you could put a suffix on it, like you say ha day, hot, han. And then I think the na is probably a contraction of nya. And so nya can go in a number of different ways because that sound is kind of gone from even like if you go, I think in Tuslan, I don't think people are saying like nya, like they might have done a long time ago. They're usually saying yina or niya, like, but it's, or just nya. And so it's the same one you hear in Henya, Sanya, Nanya. And then it's got like, once you see it, you'll see it kind of all over the place. But my guess would be Hanya, which would be, because it can, and that nya can mean sort of in the area, or it could mean shielding something, or in its blocking it, or in its way. Like you could say, I think it's duchanya. It has something to do with like blocking their mouth or something like that. But that's what I think that one is.
okay, so later on she says hana niada, like in this direction. So she but to work, yeah, further, I think, but
Okay.
oh, maybe here, yeah, just right there.
Because yeah, and so like hana nacha, so then you've got it there too. So
no, wrong way.
There it is. So hana niade. So then, okay, that's a good one too. Finding all the good.
Just
see if I can find. But kind of going through, we do have
okay.
a day closer to here. Hananach would be like towards this side. And so we see like quite a few different definitions, or like area, so closer here, area. So it could be like Hana is, I'm guessing though it is like a contracted version of that, and like sort of like it becomes its own thing. And then Niade was, so when you say Niade, it means sort of like just generally in that direction, like it's heading over that way. And so that's where I think you can sort of double up on them. Okay.
Just sur Shadak dot Kayaaní X'éig Ḳutlaakw tlak kandutanch adach way shkelsnik maitiek Ḳutlaakw tlak kandutanch. Just I'm just wondering if it's if the speed is a storytelling thing, or because she's not always fast, like, or if it's just how she talks, or
that's a really good question, because sometimes I would listen, because like in some of these recordings, there's a dog barking. And I'm like, okay, is this a really tiny yippy dog? Or is that a big dog? And like somehow this, because there's some reel-to-reels in this room over here. And we've been trying to transfer some of them. And we don't know what we're doing because like this technology is so ancient. And like, but you also have to know a lot about running reel-to-reels. And if you all know someone, send them our way. Noé is doing this project. But for some reason, like when we're like, okay, we got sound coming out of it, it's going through, and it's just like, it's like so incredibly fast. And so then I record a chunk of it, and then I use a program, Audacity, and I slow it down to 1/3 its speed. And lo and behold, it's a recording of Susie James. I was like, I recognize her. And we don't need to speed her up at all. So I do think she was legendary for speaking fast like this. But there's also a lot of like false starts. You get these almost like a stutter sometimes. And she'll go, and then she'll go, and then it just like, it's like it gets pried out and it just goes. And so she is very fast. And so it is really fun to listen to all of these and then to jump over to Bob Zuboff, who's just that is a nice leisurely stroll compared to the marathon that is Kaasgéiy. And it could be just the speed of her speech where it's like everything's getting contracted now, because it's both of them are incredibly high level speakers too. Like these things, like all of these little there's so many little ones in here that are just so fun. And it's loaded with potentials, it's loaded with habituals, and it just shows you like that high fluency thing. Like this is what we are aiming for, right? The place where he kicked up sand to one side is still there when the tide goes out. Right. And so just like it's amazing. And so the theme of this class, I guess, is everything flies by very quickly. And then for this, it just keeps going. So I do want to we'll probably do one more, and then we'll see. As far as her stories, we still have Raven goes down the bull kelp, Raven and blueberries, Raven hosts a potlatch, Raven and the killer whales, Raven and the whale, Raven loses his nose, Raven in the daylight. So we're not having class on Thursday, but I think what I'll do is I'll post every single one of those audio files so that you have them all. And if you listen to them back to back, you could listen to 14 stories in 13 minutes. It might take a little longer than that, but I do think it's worth it. Like just it's like when you dip in the cold, you got to dip in the cold water every now and then and just engage with this master storyteller. And all the elders that worked on these, they'd go, Washin is what somebody called her, and then Kayasak, like a fast talker. So let's see, we got Raven goes down the bull kelp, which is this one.
Ata kuna ye kutawa ositiwa kisa hashakauji nukusha na kositina ya uokot awata kayeto de shat kakokata kote kohote kutso awata ne ko awata to hantu chihi ya takaya katawa ahoko ne kako chihan kako Juti ako sa hucho kista kutch uniste awaka kahto pen ko das kake kista ko de Yéil Ţútaakw unis ka hin takate hakot kisi o tlak والتبشان توقع خكوسين كات تيونيس هات تادنكو أو أتو تشكي كشيس الشيطاوتي أقول تقلتو دودتي قل خواشكيو لقونيس كده وقت وتوشانكو هنكنتو واتا تكتو كوستكو أكي كوانا سوتشقق هتسيوات نتستهينكو هتسوليات نتستهينكو أشقطات توشت خون عين قاسو تيو السقاطة قلت سوو ساوي لو كتيو لتشك قلت لكو قلت لكو قلت واسيكاوها واسا قلت كوي قاسو نوصو بسلين وكتيو نتس حتى أخوة نتسخا هتسوليات يا كني أولا تقنقا قتنجته أو أتحت وأنك شقو ليسوي تشكاشو تيكوت كنت كني أولا خصها الشاعة وطان قوتها كان خنجو تيكوت أيو عيخ أو خشن تتان أتقطع توا أو قيخ ونيس ستايل قهقه ستايل إيخ أكوك سوي كتلوك هاي أكي كنت لي شيخوي وسين وصا وصا قشوي خاوصا نسوشيك دخواك خودت للصايف قوية ستة تقنيه أكي كنا نشيخ وصا وصا تغنت على سين تيا كنا الكوخ ووتسا أوتك تكاتشت لك تعنيك وشيكوخ يا قاوتها وقو عاد شكاوى قلت وشا وشالكو قاوة كاوا قو تيقتها تكاتت لي لخوض وصا يكو آيخون ودخواقو يكو آيخون تسكتها تقدين عسنة تسكتها يد وقاوتها ساق أوقك سايش ساق تلايك وادقك وزيشوق نليق وسيقت سين يتأخو قطلاية تلك وقتوخ أخاش يقصق نليق وسخارج داقك قدين آتا داقك قطاية سين يت آتا قاقية يوقتو تخاش تلهوج آية نسقي تليو آسشول قطو تخاش تلي أوه أتاية جنة وقيس عدك قطاية داقت كدو جيل تلنوه ونيقي قطاية نخصينيه نسقدو شي كقوة داقك قطيج لين وخ قلين ود يقوه لكو قطوج ستان وزاق يقصاني أوه أو سنخت أتو أوه إخايا يا أوه تيوه تشكوخ يلقوا تقيدك تطلق قلتك وسيقال قلت لك يجيش قلت قوتا إذا قوتش قصاني تلاقو تقدايش كويس تلاقو
Talk indeed.
Yes. Sorry. We can draw a picture of him lying down drinking oil. That image came up in another story.
Yeah, and it's a pretty spectacular shirt. ʼéidáx Yéil. I think it's used a lot by the Tuckdane Ton and in Nakla. As when Jessie Dalton is giving her speech, she refers specifically to that. And so sometimes this is called Raven and the Tide Lady. In Frank Itayo's version, he does specify that it's a man. All other versions, though, it is treated like a female. It's certainly worth pointing out that one of the fun parts, there's so many fun parts of these Raven stories but that is the person's name. X'éig ashayautzanuku. Ashayakauzanuku shanaku. So sometimes they have these really gigantic names. It's the little elder who I think it says enlarge the tide, but I think it means to sit on the tide. Ashuyakauzanuku. And so they set themselves onto the tide, I think. But some of these names are so interesting because they have all these verbs in there that you don't see them that way. But this is a really good, I think it's a low tone keh. So keep that in mind. But if you have this keh in front of a hortative verb, you end up with it would be good. It would be good if that verb happened. So like if you say aden kakut, let me go over there. Ke aden kakut. It'd be good if I went over there. So just like the subtlety of all of these different things, like you go through three years of Tlingit and you're learning how to do like, well, kind of like futures and perfectives. But then it's like, oh yeah, there's this whole other world of potentials and hortatives. And once you get to the hortative, like you get to these other things. And it's also worth pointing out, he's always very cute to people he's going to take advantage of. That's a pretty common theme. He has these little things that he gets, like kuch, which will be used interchangeably with nukshiyan, which is really interesting. And so, because those are different things, kuch is a marten, nukshiyan is a mink. Although if you go down to Prince of Wales, and if you say kuch, most people will translate that as mink. So that is also really interesting to me, is the interchangeability of those two things. He does, spoiler alert, he does ruin this little mink. And so it's a marten, but we translate it here as mink because she switches it to nukshiyan later. And it could be just like, those are very similar looking animals. And so they are different, but it could be just a little mix up here too. It's hard to tell. And so he does later dress it up. So he carries this thing around. He finds it and he makes it go get these sea urchins for him. And then later, because that's kind of the idea is when Raven, he goes down on the bull kelp, but he keeps popping up and he gets frustrated and he gets this mink to go get it for him. And that's when he goes to that tide lady and distracts her by usually standing between, she liked to sleep with this board on her back right next to the fire. And he stood between her and the fire. And then she was mad at him. And he said, oh, I'm so cold from eating those sea urchins. But then like that was the distraction technique, because then he picks her up and hits her on the butt with those. And that's what you hear with them. That's her like talking about him continuing to hit her in the butt with these, like all around the butt with a sea otter shell or a sea urchin shell. And that's when she says the tide can go down. So I think you do get a potential there. It's like command, command. And then Today is like don't, like stop it now. And then it can go down. And so that's what you're getting there is a is the conjugation. And so you get the tide can go down. And so like learning how to do some of those potentials is like, once you get the potential, you can add some things around it. So you could say, maybe it's going to go down. Gidzanuch is like usually a helper of Raven. So he does have these pretty specific group of helpers. X'éig is another one that you're going to see pop up. It's really interesting, like to look at all of these stories together. This is like, just the Tlingit alone is several hundred pages of stories. There is some text in between. There's a whole bunch of notes in here. We tried to do a bunch of notes and to honor Richard Dowenhauer, but we did these ones a little different where the notes come after each individual story so you wouldn't have to flip all the way to the back of the book and that kind of thing. I don't know what this will look like when it comes out. It was so much fun to work on. I wish someone should have taken a picture. I don't think I ever did of what it was like when we were working. But if you were to walk in, you would have Marge right there on the other side of the table from me, and George right there on this side of the table with a window right here. I'm on this side of the table with my laptop. My laptop is plugged into this little red box called a Scarlett 2 something something. It's a little audio interface. Then there's 2 microphones, and one's right in between them, and one's right here. We all have headphones on. We talk into the microphone so we could hear each other, and that way we can listen to the thing and still talk to each other at the same time. Between the 3 of us, we're able to get quite a bit of this stuff. Some of these they're already done. Kayaaní had done so much of this stuff, so much of this work. It's really like when this thing comes out, it's like the final sort of chunk of this legacy that is her work. And so I think she ended there, and then it switches. So we see Kayaaní working on this one, and Zeus. And then we get to Yéil Ḳutlaakw. Nora worked on that one. And then Yéil Ḳutlaakw, Yéil Ḳutlaakw, Yéil Ďushuk, and then Yéil Ḳutlaakw. And then this one, I think it does end before you get to the recording ends before the story's over. And I don't, to my knowledge, I don't know where it continues. Maybe they just didn't realize the tape stopped. I don't really know. But that's it for this evening. Any thoughts or questions? It's an awful lot of Tlingit. You guys probably had 15,000 words just roll into your ears in about 70 minutes. So it's a lot. But she's the best. She's so good. So good. And then when you there's one of her stories in the Hashika. She tells one of the Glacier Bay histories, right? And so we do have a recording of that as well. So I'll put all these recordings up. No class on Thursdays. Take it easy. Get ready for the last run through next week. We'll probably just stick with the Raven book. I know we talked about doing 4 story. It's such an impossible class, but it's so wonderful too. We didn't do Cyril George. We didn't do very much of George Davis. There's Sophie Smarch. There's Chukatine. There's so much stuff. This is really dipping into this only gets us to the 2000s or maybe just the 1970s, and then it kind of stops. But I guess we'll have to have a part 2 someday. Maybe, I don't know. We'll figure it out. Gonna cheese train.
Gonna teach.
Sheesh.
Cheese.
Cheese.